Brad, thanks for taking the time to be with us and just talk to us a little bit, talk to me a little bit, and help us understand what life is like for you, where you are. Just why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, your wife, your family, where you are, how you got there. Just sort of a 5 minute bio for us.
Sure, I'll try to keep it to less than five. So I'm Brad, um, Brad Summers. So we're church planting, or have church planted. We're not a church plant anymore, but we have church planted in Atlantic Canada, Halifax, Nova Scotia. And since then, 3 years ago, we planted another of our church. So our church name is PAX North, and the church that got planted out of our church is called Grace Village Church.
Okay.
And it's going through a bit of amalgamation right now. It's helping a struggling church, an older church, and so it's trying to reestablish that church's theological roots,
Nice.
and trying to bring new life there. And so they're doing quite well. It's still I think revitalization might be harder than planting. So,
Yeah.
but we have the enjoyment of just partnering with them and
Great.
caring for them, and we feel like they're parents. They've launched out of us. So
Okay, very cool. So geographic proximity
yeah,
between where you meet and where they meet?
yeah, that's a great question. We're about an hour, I would say about an hour and 10, hour and 15 from where they are. So they're inland farther into the Annapolis Valley area.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Good.
So, and we moved here. We've been here. I think we've been here in Nova Scotia for 14 years. We planted the church 13 years ago, March.
Okay.
So we started the groundwork.
Wow.
Church,
Okay.
yeah, church wasn't officially a church for a couple of years after that, but
Great.
yeah,
Wow, I can't believe it's been that long already.
I know it's kind of flown in some ways, in other ways,
Sure.
it seems like a whole new life in so many ways.
Okay.
So we moved here with our 5 kids, and
Yeah.
now we have 7.
Yeah.
But our church, our family, we have our oldest is 22.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. He just had a birthday last week, 2 weeks ago. So 22, and then our youngest is 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Good. And you're married to Shelby. How long have you guys been married?
Yeah, married to Shelb. So you put me on the spot to have to remember this, aren't you?
It's okay. Just don't score, I guess.
No, it's been 30 years, so it's pretty simple.
Good.
March is our 30-year anniversary.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Right on.
pretty
Well,
big
good
deal.
job
Yeah.
with that. Wonderful. It's good. Good. So I have some specific questions, obviously related to the recent events there, and it's been a hard go for the province just with the recent crash there as well, and so heavy hearts for you and for everyone who's there. So I wanted our people to have a better understanding of what life was like there and how this has affected people and so on. But I got a great email from one of our church members, which I think just reflects really well. This is the kind of heart that we should have. And this brother had gone on Canada 411 and searched by area of the areas most affected and pulled up all of the names and just started praying for all of the people whose last names started with the same letter that his did, so that he would be praying for specific people in those communities, which I just thought was very creative
Yeah,
and commendable as a way of just ministering and laboring really in secret for a whole community. So, but I just wanted to be able to bring a little bit more to our church. We support you guys. There's financial support, there's prayer support. We're delighted for that gospel partnership. So I'm just going to shoot some questions your way, Brad. And
sure. Let me just say, if you go to the phone book and pray for all the Macs, it's going to be a long prayer. A lot of Scottish roots, so a ton of Macs. So
Macs, all right, right on. Makes sense, right? Nova Scotia makes sense.
Right.
So first, just sort of comment and question is: the farther removed we are from tragedy, it seems the more easily it is for us to forget that the people who have gone through are still going through it. Like, we go back to sort of normal life, it hits the news, we're grieved and sorrowful, and we pray, and then we kind of forget. So from your perspective, what's it like for people there, Brad, as they continue to grapple with what happened? And how has that maybe even changed from when news first hit to today?
Yeah. But I've been following a little bit of your prayer stuff too, and I was thinking there's probably some similar some of the prayer requests that are going around in the church. There's probably some similar feelings. You know, COVID hits, and you're isolated, and then you start hearing of friends or communities. So right in our community, we have so we're in the north end of Halifax. For those who don't know, it's a high has been historically high risk, high needs.
Right.
You know, we have people who live in senior homes, like senior complexes,
Yep.
housing complexes, low income senior housing complexes.
Right.
So there's 3 or 4 of those right here in the area, and several of our people in the church live in those complexes.
Okay.
And then we have several like recovery centers, Salvation Army, and we have a few people who've also lived there who are part of our church or going through recovery programs who are part of our church, attached to our church. And so just like those are high risk communities, right? In
Sure.
and out. And then we have, there's a seniors, like kind of a step down program complex where you can have all your needs cared for as you need to, or you can be kind of independent living.
Okay.
And that's just up the street from our house. That's where 60% of all the deaths from COVID has happened right in this community, right in this neighborhood. Um,
So
so
right
you
in
know,
the backyard.
yeah. So you feel that weight, right? You just feel that sadness, and you're watching the news, and you're seeing the numbers go up, and the number of frontline workers who work in these places as well. You see those numbers going up for COVID cases. So you know, you start to feel that weight, and then we had this you know, horrendous shooting, mass shooting.
Yeah.
You know, not even 2 weeks ago now,
Yeah.
that we started to hear the trickle of something was going on. I saw one of our police officers, who we have 2 police officers in the church,
Okay.
city police, who began to throw stuff up from Twitter on his Facebook page and
Wow.
to say, "Hey, this spread the word about you know, an active shooter
Okay.
in that area." So
Wow.
you're going, okay, well, what is this? This is a rural area.
Hmm.
Where most of this happened. The guy who did the shooting has a dental place just in our Twin City, Dartmouth here, just
Wow.
across the bridge from us. So
Okay.
there's ties, right, between
Yeah.
the city and those who are working, and you know, those who are doing the crime, those kind of things. So uh, as everything kind of unfolds, there's a real sense of fear,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah.
And it's legitimate fear
Yeah.
in many ways, right? Um,
And then there was that subsequent instance too. I think it was in a parking lot where then
mhm.
there was an emergency alert given, which just must kick that fear up in an even more palpable way, right? I know it didn't amount to anything, but still, that must have
Yeah,
been just devastating.
yeah. Like a week later, there's like three in one day. There's these three warnings that go out within maybe 30 minutes of each
Wow.
other,
Okay.
right? Of maybe another active shooter, which would have been closer to the city,
Okay.
um, those kind of things. But you know, it was really interesting to watch. So even on the Halifax Strong, they did a um, a video, kind of a memorial
Yep.
that was on TV. You know, there's three pastors who shared,
Yeah.
who are evangelical pastors, have a good grasp of the gospel. One of them is a fellowship pastor
Oh, right on.
as well, Steve Adams. So there's a real sense of, in those smaller
Mm,
communities, there were these touch bases of
good.
gospel hope, right?
Great. That's good.
So there's um, that kind of sense of, okay, God is able to comfort or move through or help.
Yeah.
And it became, I know for Steve Adams Church in Great Village, it became a means for them to um, supply their neighbors' needs. I mean, they put up
Good.
hey, if you want funding that
Mm,
you can directly, you know, give to families, and we know who they are, and those kind of things. So
nice.
there was some gospel opportunity there, right? And
Great.
some care for neighbors, but but yeah, it's devastating.
Mm.
So many levels.
Yeah.
Then yeah, this past weekend, with the cyclone crash in outside of Italy there,
Yeah.
we have the cyclones fly out of shearwater here
Okay.
in Halifax. So, and the lead safety guy, he's a major, and he's actually a part of our church. He's one of our elders.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
Oh, wow. So that's really close to home for you guys.
yeah,
Oh,
he,
wow. Wow. So you're really, I mean, in the thick of, you're in the province, you're pastoring a guy like this through something like that, or you're talking with a guy like that, and in the midst of fear and anxiety and all the
mm,
questions and so on. So, I mean, what sort of specific beyond what you just mentioned, are there other ways in which this has created pastoral opportunities for you? Like, are there a lot of conversations about these
mm.
events, or what's that like for you as you're pastoring?
Yeah. I would say this is yeah, it's definitely, and you're probably feeling that as well. There, it's just definitely a unique time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, one of the things that we've seen happen even in our missional communities have continued to meet online,
Hmm.
and but the missional communities are set up to originally to be a meal together,
Okay.
and invite others into a meal, those that you've been caring for, those you're reaching out to.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're not doing the meal, obviously. Well, you can eat, but you're eating at home. So
You don't have to share, and you can't share, right?
yeah, exactly. So, but it's been interesting to see, people who are neighbors and friends of others who are struggling emotionally, especially with either loneliness or
Yeah.
anxiety, panic attack kind of feelings, connecting into those missional communities, wanting to be a part of it. And the missional communities are really clear. We're here to support and encourage each other, but we spend time in the Word of God. We,
Yeah.
focus our struggles and troubles on, what is kind of the gospel solution? How does the gospel work out in us? How does Christ's death, burial, resurrection
Hmm.
actually transform our thinking on these things?
Beautiful.
So it's interesting to see that those conversations happening, in either peripheral Christians,
Yeah.
those who might be on the peripheral, or those who are just not believers,
Okay.
connecting in. So we've had some of that.
Great.
Um, Lots of online conversations, right, in our region right now.
Yeah.
Um, Several of our, so we have our church planting resident right now,
Okay.
and his family is from the area where the shootings happened.
Okay.
So there's several like, um, 3 degrees away kind of conversations, right? Like my brother grew up with one of the individuals who
Right.
was shot, or one of the families that were killed, and I've been talking to him, or been talking to him and his
Right.
friends. Like we've had several of those
Yeah.
stories get back to us.
Okay.
So
And one of our, there's quite a few people in our congregation who are from Nova Scotia, were there a long time and
mm,
aren't anymore. And they've been helping me understand that the sort of general planet is like, what would it say, 6 degrees of separation, whereas in Nova Scotia it's like 3 or 2
yeah,
or 1.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
it's much more tight knit than we
yeah,
would understand in Ontario, or what we would experience in Ontario versus what's going on in Nova Scotia. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so I think in regards to the shooting, there's been lots of conversation. I mean, one of the things I think is still true in rural Nova Scotia is there's still like a Christian foundation of sorts,
okay.
right? So there's still that, there's still a boldness that feels bold. It's not really bold, but it
Sure.
feels bold in our climate, right? Like to have 3 or 4 pastors on this Remember Nova Scotia time, and they're praying, or they're giving a a touch base, at least a start to the gospel. It feels like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's bold, right? But
Yeah.
in those climates, in those urban or those rural climates, it's not uncommon, right? So we are really praying for revival in those,
Yeah.
yeah, in those rural areas, because a lot of them have really lost the understanding of the gospel, especially
Okay.
probably 2 generations away at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Um, so so I think that's one of the big things we'd love to have prayer for.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that is great to have those specifics, and that's one of the main reasons for just having this conversation is so we can pray along with you more intelligently. Um, and it's great to hear those opportunities are happening for
Yeah.
explore those conversations. And so those are opportunities. I mean, in those conversations, are there obstacles? Not just necessarily related to everything that's happening with COVID, because there's clearly obstacles and barriers that we're not
Mm.
accustomed to. But something like this happens, and it kicks up a lot of the sort of the painful, emotional, difficult, intellectual, even questions of why didn't God stop it? Why is He not loving? He's not powerful. Is He? Have you encountered much in the way of obstacles in that regard of people just sort of not wanting to have anything to do with God's word, with Christ? What's been your experience in that regard?
So it's really funny. Like especially in the city seems to be a lot more hostile, right? To an urban setting seems a lot more hostile Christianity. It's a very secular
Yeah.
urban setting here in Halifax. So typically there's a lot more hostility. Um, it's funny to watch. Even I was watching one of a CBC interview with a girl who is a musician here from Halifax,
Mhm.
and she was talking about her own emotional struggle through all that was going on,
Okay.
and she apologized for it to the guy who was doing the interview, but she said, one of the ways I've made it through this is I've prayed. I've just been praying.
Well.
So,
Mm.
like, and there's no indication that she's a believer. It
Yeah.
sounds like there might be some in her background, some Christian roots in their background there, um, but to see that, like that boldness, even
Mhm.
even to say, I've been praying. Like there is a new sense. So, a couple of things that have happened. We've had within a week of the COVID shutdown happening, we had three different nonprofits reach out to us
Okay.
probably within the first 5 days and just say, can you help us with food deliveries, food care,
Well.
people who can't afford food and stuff like that. So we reached out to one of our girls who serves kind of as our administrative assistant as a part-time role. She works with mobile food markets here,
Mhm.
and so we reached out to some of our kind of hipster farmers,
Yeah.
and so we started put together these $10 packs of vegetable and fresh veggies and fruit right from the farms.
Fantastic.
And over the last, it's what, been 5 or 6 weeks. Every week they've increased.
Wow.
So we're paying $10 for the packages,
Yeah.
and I think we're over 50 a week now,
Really
just getting them out. So
amazing. And
so
did
it's
I see somewhere you posted something about how like that's a sacrificial commitment? Like your elders have
yeah.
decided, and you've decided together that you're feeling it personally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, the elders decided to give 20% of the church's income from the time this started until this ends.
Yeah.
20% are going directly to like COVID relief to help
Wow.
families and people. So I've been able to do several things. Some of our people have reached out to their friends who were especially in between jobs. As they got let go, and there was the province or the country hadn't quite figured out what they're going to do for
Right.
financial help.
Right.
There was a lot of stop gaps there,
Yeah.
and then the city took I think it was 20 and 30 high risk street level folks and put
Okay.
them up in hotels, low income
Oh, really?
hotels
Okay.
here in the city.
Yeah.
So we got a call from mobile mental health unit asking if we would have a few people who would go into these hotels, take meals to them that were provided not through us but through
Yeah.
other nonprofits. We go in and take them into it. So
Hmm.
I mean, our people were all over it. They're like, yeah, absolutely, because
Great.
a lot of these folks we've hung out with,
Yeah.
we know, and it gave us an opportunity to care for them, pray with them.
Okay.
Very open to prayer.
That's good.
So I feel like there's much less hostility,
Right.
and much more, even in the idea of why this attack, why deaths.
Yeah.
There seems to be much more sensitivity to,
Okay.
hey, something bigger is at work here.
Right.
So we have been praying that God would just revive and renew, that He'd bring a revival out of this.
Beautiful. That's good. You're hitting on something that's working in the back of my mind there. And I was going to ask you this question, but you've answered it in saying that a lot of the people that you've had opportunity to reach out to, you've already established a relationship with in some form or another.
Mm.
And I appreciate that. I'm challenged by that because we have, our church has given very generously to a benevolent fund that we have, which is for needs within our church community, but for sure beyond that as well. So that's sitting in a very healthy place right now. And I've been reaching out just in the ways that I can to different, community groups through social media and so on and so forth. And we're not right now able to connect these resources with people who need them. And and I think it's revealing a gap in that we're not getting calls like you guys have gotten. And so it's making me, wonder, well, where's the gap? Why wouldn't we get phone calls like that from our community? And why wouldn't we be considered as a church that would be willing to step in and meet these needs and so on? And it helps me think through that there's some work to be done just as far as inroads to our community so that people know that we're there. And, we're not wrestling with a difficult question, which is if your church wasn't there anymore, would people even notice? If that answer's no, it's really quite problematic. So
I do feel on some regard that this is that's not an easy solution, right?
Sure.
That is for us, it's been however long we've been here, it's been on the streets and in the communities constantly. And our people have been very, I think especially over the last 5-6 years, have been very engaged in that. Before that, it felt like it was me.
Okay,
I was the planter and the family was a planter, and we had one or two along with.
Sure.
But there's been a shift, I think, in that as well. So one of our young teachers called her teacher community and said, do you know of any of the families in our churches, and they are in our school, who were really struggling financially or struggling with food? And so that was one of the avenues that we've added in the last week of 14 new families.
Okay, good idea.
So they just bought $400 worth of Walmart gift cards and food. And every second week they'll get a food pack, and then every third week they'll get another Walmart gift card.
Okay, that's great
to help their families. So
okay.
Honestly, Sean, there's been it's been a little embarrassing for me in the fact that I feel like we've put all this work into the streets, and it's been really great, and we're getting responses. But then I was in quarantine for 14 days like you were, because my wife came back from the States.
Okay.
And that was right near the beginning. She was, it would have been maybe 2 weeks in. And I'm getting all these phone calls. Can you? And I'm like, well, I can't.
Yeah.
but it was really exciting to see, and you could see God's hand in this. Really exciting to see our people. They pulled together and they said, let's start a network of care. And we pinpointed this all to one of our ladies, and she organizes the network of care. So everyone sends in, here's what I need, here's what I can do. And she just began to say, okay, who can deliver food on the weekends to these motels? Who can put together the hampers for us? And as the hampers have grown, who else can? So we've had a couple of people jump in on that. And, a really neat thing happened. I think it's something that I think most senior care facilities are willing to do. I called Northwood last week because our people were just worried or bothered that here are the places in our neighborhood. We have a couple of individuals who actually live there.
Okay.
And we've just had very limited opportunity, right? You can't go in, and you can't send things in. You can't stand outside and give donuts out or whatever. They won't let any of that happen. So I called this lady at the desk, and I thought I'm just going to get the answer machine, and it's going to be a runaround. I'm never really going to get anyone. So last week, early in the week, I called, and one of the ladies was after me. You need to call them and see what we can do. So I called, and within the second phone call, got this lady at the front desk, and introduced myself, told her who we were, told her where we were in the relation to them. Like, we're just 2 blocks down
Sure.
our church space is actually 2 blocks away from them. And so we've been praying for you guys, and we really feel bad. We really want to be able to do something. We know we can't come in.
Yep.
We know some of the nurses who work there. So some of our nurses know some of the nurses who work there. And many of those nurses are actually staying in hotels while to stay separate from their families.
Right. Sure. Yeah, of course.
So, but they can't be with their families, and they're feeling this pressure. And one of the ladies was on her 10th 12-hour shift with like
Wow.
a 6 or 8 hour break in between.
Wow.
As of, I think that was from one of our ladies, that was Friday that she had talked to her.
Mhm.
So the lady, I said, I don't know what we can do. Can we write letters? Can we write a card? Can we send cards in and put our phone numbers on it, our names and phone numbers, and say, if you want someone to pray with you, if you want someone to
Okay.
talk to you. She goes, yeah, we got one chaplain here that we let in, and she said, the little girl has run off her feet. That's what
No
she
kidding.
said.
Wow.
And I said, we would love that. We'd love to have conversations with your people or with your workers.
Okay.
Can we send cards in? Yeah, and can we send pictures of kids' drawings and stuff to encourage?
Sure.
She said that would be amazing. She said,
That's fantastic.
so her reply to me, which I was just like, I was trying to be careful not to be too overbearing with Christian faith, and she said, I think God would really bless that.
Really?
Yeah,
No
so I'm like, I shouldn't be so timid myself.
That's
So
fantastic.
they just had a really great response to her. So our church has begun to put these letters together and send them in, and basically what happens is they have to go through the mail. You
Yep.
can't take them in. They have to go through the mail. They sit for 48 hours.
Okay.
And then the staff takes them and puts them up on the walls and hands them out to people, and
Okay.
gives them to workers or whatever. So
Yeah.
we're
Great idea.
excited about that really simple idea.
Okay.
And I think some of it too, Sean, is you have to have those degrees, right? Like,
Yeah.
not everyone feels comfortable to go into a hotel with a group of street people
Sure.
and talk to them. But
Yeah.
the degrees of just being able to send a card
Yeah.
with a phone number just to be
Yeah.
able to pray with someone.
Yeah.
I'm
That's really
excited
good.
to see what'll happen from that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. It's a great idea. And I mean, sharing this with the church, HBC, you're watching this, I hope. And there's some creative thinking, and hopefully those get some of our juices going and help us think of ways that we can be engaging in reaching out to people right now, too. So it's terrific. Good. Very good. Any other ways, Brad, that we can, let me ask this question. In the normal course of going through tragedy, grief, loss, and some that can be provincial, global, national scale, and that can be just someone has a family member in your church who dies, and we've had that. A few of our people are going through that right now. How have you? How have you seen the inability to gather and go through in community this grieving mourning process? Like what, do we not see the effects of that yet? Is it going to be long term? Are you seeing that now? And how is that just as a province? What's that been like from your observations?
Yeah, man, that is a really hard one, right? Because I mean, that's one thing that small communities do really well. So either small church together,
Yeah.
small communities of rural together. I mean, it is. I know growing up in a small community, whenever there was a death of someone, especially young people or
Yeah.
or old people who've been around the community a long time, everyone comes out.
Yeah.
Right. And you're almost measured by by how many people come out, right?
Sure. Yeah. That's right.
So the effect that you had, and it is I think that's probably going to be is possibly one of the hardest things in our community, and probably in churches community too.
Yeah.
You just can't all come together, and it is it's such a reminder of the healing work of the Spirit through bearing one another's burdens at a close proximity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the
So yeah,
ministry of presence has been taken away from us, right? And yeah, often in those different types of things, different types of situations, people don't really remember what you said 10 years later, right? They
yeah,
just remember you were there.
yeah,
And we're not even able to be there for one another. And
yeah.
I'm sensing that even in our own people, you know, like we have one brother whose mother died unexpectedly this week.
Hmm.
Just like they just can't get to him, right? And it's just it's agonizing.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what that must be like for these whole communities
Hmm.
going through that, and just you know, what the emotional, mental, spiritual side effects
Hmm.
or consequences of that. I can't imagine what that's going to be.
Yeah. There's been lots of drive-by type stuff, right? Lots of everyone's showing up at a memorial place, whatever, in cars, but it's still not quite the same.
No,
No.
I saw well, my wife and daughter and I posted a video in one of the Nova Scotia kitchen party
Yeah.
Facebook things. I know you saw that, and I thought that was a pretty creative way of people participating, and that just is continuing to flood
Yeah.
of people posting songs online to encourage and comfort and uh, bring some levity, and that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's a huge thing. I mean, that is one of the big things here in Atlantic Canada is that's how we grew up too. It's like anytime you're together, everyone brings an instrument, a
Yeah,
guitar or a voice, and you bust them out sometime in the night and sing little. Everyone takes a turn with a song they know.
yeah,
We
yeah.
always call them little ditties. You sing some little ditty, and everyone sings along.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That was not unfamiliar to me. Like I grew up like that. I've got a big family. My dad has a huge family, a lot of guitars, different
yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I grew up that way too. So that's not that was pretty neat to see something like that. So
There's so much joy in that too, right?
yeah,
So yeah, those are all touch points, but being able to actually be in someone's kitchen, that's definitely. I think it's just a great reminder for us as a church
yeah,
how important being in someone's kitchen is, right?
yeah.
Being in those communities are, and how much sometimes we think we have to have the right answers as opposed to, like you said, just the ministry of presence
Mhm,
is
mhm.
is huge.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I our church has heard this a couple times now. I mean, I've posted it as well on social media, but all of the different threads in Paul's letters, especially about longing, can't wait to see you, praying for an open door. I love and long for my joy and crown. Come to me soon as you can. All that different type of language is making a whole lot more sense now than it did
mm,
about 2 months ago. And I think that communicates to us the importance of being with one another as God's people and being with people who are hurting and
mm,
sorrowful and so on.
yeah. We've been working through the book of First Peter. We were before this happened,
Yeah.
and then we stopped for a bit of a series during Lent and Easter,
Mhm.
and then we picked First Peter up again.
Yeah.
And just oh man, just the depth now, the new meaning, or the depth of meaning that has taken on.
Yeah.
When the theme is the exile life. When you
Right.
say the exile life, we all know it. We all,
Yeah.
to a very very small degree,
Yeah.
but we do all have a sense of it. Um, and trying to encourage our people to move into sorrow,
Right.
uh, to be to realize that sorrow is actually an embodiment of the gospel. That there is you are putting to you are allowing the self to be put to death as it dies in Christ, and then you're waiting, right? You're waiting for that resurrection life to be seen around you. So suffering as the embodiment of the gospel. It's not simply the words we believe the gospel, but it's the way that we embody the
Yeah.
gospel, and helping our people think that through. I think gives us a posture of, okay, if there is a need that then comes out of this COVID or this helicopter, this cyclone crash,
Yeah.
if there are needs, I think we're ready then to respond. We're not protecting our comforts first. We're
Yeah.
saying this is a moment for me to die to self and allow this kind of new life to begin to take place with kind of a gospel work of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I've really grabbed onto Paul's language when he talks about sorrowful yet rejoicing, and how we experience both. And I mean, the conversation we're having about, the church and ministry and so on really isn't, it's intensified for sure, but it's not really that different than what we'd be talking about normally, because there's always stuff that causes you to weep, and there's all the stuff that causes you to praise God and celebrate. And that's just how it is until Christ comes and we have new heavens and new earth. So it is an important reminder for us. And if this is stamping on this generation the reality of that, some great good can come of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that regard, right, then you're never really far removed from someone else's tragedy, right? Because you do feel that the fragility of your own life and the vulnerability of your own life. At least that's what it should do for us as believers.
Yeah, for sure. And that will always mean that there will be ministry, because suffering is inevitable, right? Your own or others, it will come. And so if we have a good theology of suffering and understanding, death, resurrection, and the hope to come in the midst of that, there will always be something that the Lord will have for us to do and convince them, because there's always suffering around us. So if we really lean into it, we could be shaped and formed for, ongoing fruitful ministry in the future.
Yeah, that's good, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, good. Well, I appreciate your heart and mine, brother, both. And, just the commitment you have to God's word and the gospel, and the way that you live that out and model that for your church. It's beautiful and helpful, and always challenging and stretching for me to have these interactions. So I'm grateful for it. Any other specific ways we could intelligently pray for you, for PAX, for the church plant, just to have that set before us?
So I think a couple of things that would really be helpful. So first of all, I have to say thanks so much for HPCs and their care, the people who love us dearly, even people who don't know us, but there's a bunch of people there who do, and they just love us dearly. And
True story.
we're moved by that. That's incredible, that faithfulness to us, the giving to the purposes of Christ here in Atlantic Canada. That's a big deal to us. So I don't want to just push that off.
Sure,
I
appreciate
want to make sure we say thank you about that. But it's allowed us to be more stable. We've just seen so many threads of God before this all happened. So as you know, I've worked construction off and on over the last 12, 13 years as we plan it. So every year at the end of the financial year, I always go full time. Okay, we're going to go full time.
Okay.
And then 2 months from now, we'll check it and see if I'm going to be co-laboring, doing two different things. This is the first year in probably, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe 8, that I haven't worked construction for the whole, like a whole year.
Praise God.
It's just an incredible blessing to us and our family. But then by the end of this fiscal year, right before the end of this fiscal year, and right before this COVID hit, we had a couple of big donors just give financially, just out of nowhere.
Really?
And all of a sudden we were in the black.
Wow.
By 10,000, and we're like,
Praise
what?
God, that is fantastic.
It just hasn't happened. That just doesn't happen to us, right? So and people are really faithful. We have several individuals who are really faithful for giving, and a couple of churches have been really keeping us on the radar, which we preach so amazingly. But we're like, okay, so all of a sudden we have this extra kind of funds, and so our plan has been to begin a residency for church planters in our region.
Right.
So we brought a resident on and gave him a kind of a half pay, not really half, not quite half, but
half of a church planter's salary pay.
Exactly. So he works on the side as well, teaching English through Zoom, so it works for him.
Okay, good.
So we brought him on. He had the most difficult time finding housing here, and it wasn't until maybe a week and a half right before kind of COVID really began to be on everyone's radar. They found a house, found a place.
Okay.
We've just seen the threads of God preparing us,
right on.
getting us in a place to address these things. So, so as you intercede for us, praise, right? Huge praise.
Excellent.
We've got a ton of praises within the context of our own family as well that I don't have time to share, but
sure, that's okay.
bringing our son back from Ohio was a big deal.
Right.
Just at the end of the fall, he's struggling with some mental health things,
Okay.
and had stepped away from his work. And a month into the COVID crisis, I heard on the news that Ohio was the second highest hit for unemployment. So
Hmm.
he would never have gotten work,
Yeah.
or if he had just started work, because he was at another job and he had to back out because of some mental health stuff. If he
Okay.
had just started work, he would have been the first to drop.
Yeah, of course.
So we got him home like a month before that happened. We got him established, got some medical help and stuff like that. So just like threads that we've seen, like
That's
God
great.
was just setting us up. He knew what was coming, and he was setting us up to be ready. So
Fantastic.
that's
It,
been that's a big thing. Just like the praise of
yeah,
that.
well, we will join you on that, brother. That's great. It calls to mind those words that Jesus wrote. I think to the church in Philadelphia when he says, I have the keys of David, and I open and no one shuts, and I shut and no one opens, and he
Mm,
holds a door open for the work of the gospel. And that
yeah.
sounds like exactly what he's been doing and what he is doing for you and for the brothers and sisters there at PAX and this church planting resident. And that is definitely something to rejoice in. The sermon
Mm,
this morning for our church was from Acts chapter 11, and it just talked about Peter going back and reporting what had happened to the Cornelius's house, and they were struck silent, dumbfounded, and then the next thing they do is they glorify God, saying, "Wow, salvation has come." And
mm,
so, yeah, we'll certainly rejoice with you in the way that God has provided, and pray that He will continue to do that, so that
mm.
the word may speed quickly ahead from your efforts.
Amen. Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate that. Pray for our. We do have some frontline workers.
Okay.
We have some young doctors just starting their careers.
Mhm.
One of them just got diagnosed with COVID last week,
Okay.
so she's not having. She's in our. She's at our prayer meeting on a regular basis online.
Yeah.
She's having lots of severe headaches, but other than that, she's been doing pretty well.
Okay.
She doesn't work directly with COVID patients. She works with cancer patients.
Okay.
And so she was praying for that the cancer patients she had been visiting would
Okay.
not be diagnosed with COVID. So
Okay.
they did all the testing and other praise, and none of the cancer patients had COVID. So
Wonderful. Good.
she was really thankful for that. But pray for her recovery.
Okay.
And yeah, we have several like senior care workers
Okay.
who work at senior care houses and places. So
Okay.
and then people in our church who are low income and live in low income housing, high rises and stuff like that.
Right.
Can
Yeah,
definitely
population
have to pray for
density
that.
is a concern there, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
So, and we have a couple of individuals who've been in recovery centers or homeless shelters, and those are high risk
Right.
communities
Right. Of course.
in and
Okay.
out. So,
Good. Well, yeah. I mean, even those requests just reminds us of the ministry dynamic that you're serving and laboring in. So it's good.
appreciate that.
Good. Well, thanks, Brad. I think it's going
Good.
to be encouragement for people to have access to this. I know that it will be, as it always is when we've had you with us. And so I really appreciate the time, brother. It's been great.
I may be knocking on your door a little more, Sean, because my daughter Addison is going to Heritage in a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Good.
So I may be up there a little more.
Great. Sounds good. Well, that will be happy for that, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is she planning on starting in the fall?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
She's going to start into the music department there
Okay. Good.
with Doug. So
Okay. Right on. Excellent.
yeah.
That's good. Good. I'll
Yeah.
see you on campus too. Then we're chipping away at my masters right now, so I'm there.
Okay.
We'll be there once a week in the fall if we're in person, which hopefully we will be. So
It's great. I'll let you buy me coffee. I mean, I'll buy you coffee.
sure, I can do that. Happy to. Good.
It's great. And just personally, have you ever been to Nova Scotia?
You know what? No, I haven't.
Dude.
And yeah, we have good friends of ours. Maybe this will be the year they said that we make it to Nova Scotia. We got called honorary Nova Scotians because we posted a video on the
Absolutely.
there. But yeah, I would love to come and see that part of.
Oh yeah, you need to come down and hit the Highlands. We have the Highlands here, and you'd feel like you're back home, and
I'm sure, yeah.
yeah, you'd become an honorary Nova Scotian, no problem.
I'll bring my kilt and bust it out at some
Absolutely.
point. And
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you'd come to the hotels here, and the guys will be wearing kilts. So
there you go. Well, I would definitely go home then.
bring your clan colors, and
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. Good stuff.
great.
Good. Well, just I wanted to also thank you, Brad, for that article you wrote. We've shared it with our church family. If you've not seen Brad's article on the Gospel Coalition website now, Canada Gospel Coalition, can our hurt find a resting place in times of sorrow and terror? So you'll see Brad's theological acumen and his pastor's heart come through together in that article. Is just really well done. Appreciate that, Brad.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Wyatt did a good job editing. I'm bad at editing.
He's good at
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Great. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
It's good. I will. I'll share this with our church family, and I hope it will stimulate us here to be considering greater gospel fruit in where God has placed us.
Thanks, Sean. That's hugely encouraging to us to have you reach out and do this.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you.